This is based on official documentation that surfaced less than 12 hours ago, and what these documents reveal about Meghan Markle has already triggered an emergency response from Buckingham Palace that nobody saw coming.
Behind palace walls, whispers turned to panic when a confidential leak surfaced. King Charles and Prince William, bound by duty and legacy, were forced into a decision few believed they would ever make. A secret bank account, quietly buried for years, suddenly threatened the monarchy's fragile balance. Titles once symbolic became weapons, lines were drawn, doors were shut, and Meghan was blindsided as power shifted overnight. Nothing inside the palace would ever be the same for the monarchy. Was this the breaking point? On the morning of January 1st, 2026, a sealed envelope arrived quietly at Clarence's house, addressed to the king's private secretary. Inside was a file that immediately placed the palace on high alert. 47 pages of financial records, emails, and transaction logs spanning 3 years. These were internal, confidential documents obtained through a discreet forensic audit that began in late 2024, conducted in total secrecy by a Geneva-based firm renowned for tracking high-net-worth assets worldwide. What the files revealed stunned even seasoned palace aides. Meghan Markle had maintained a private offshore account under a corporate name in the British Virgin Islands, into which just over £4.2 million flowed between 2019 and 2022. The timing was striking. The account was opened 3 months before Harry and Meghan announced their step back from royal duties, and the deposits aligned closely with their public claims of financial independence and being cut off from royal support. The documents grew more alarming. Email exchanges between Meghan and a Los Angeles-based financial advisor laid out step-by-step instructions for structuring transfers to avoid reporting requirements in both the UK and the US. One email dated November 14th, 2019 stated, "We need to ensure this stays below the radar until we're completely clear of palace oversight." Another from February 20th, 2020, just weeks before their final royal engagement, detailed projected earnings from media deals not yet public, referencing streaming platforms and production contracts that later matched the Netflix and Spotify agreements almost exactly. These negotiations were taking place while the Sussexes were still working royals, receiving taxpayer-funded security, and carrying out official duties for the crown, suggesting a carefully planned exit strategy secured months before even the Queen was informed. The file revealed deeper layers still. Bank statements showed frequent transfers from the British Virgin Islands account to a second account in Delaware, a jurisdiction known for corporate secrecy. That Delaware account financed operational costs for Archewell, which was publicly presented as a charity funded through private donations and personal earnings. In reality, a significant portion of its early operating capital came from an undisclosed account structured to avoid scrutiny and funded while Meghan and Harry were still bound by royal financial protocols. Neither the palace nor the Charity Commission was aware of these transactions. The timeline sharpened concerns further. In January 2020, the Sussexes publicly announced their step back from royal duties, emphasizing financial independence. By March, they completed their final engagements and relocated to North America. 3 months later, they purchased a $14 million estate in Montecito, placing nearly $5 million down. While reports suggested a loan or private assistance, the documents showed otherwise. In May 2020, roughly £3 million was transferred from the offshore account to a U.S. escrow service, directly funding the purchase. It was not a loan, but money accumulated months earlier, shielded from oversight and fully under their control. Every timestamp and transfer painted a picture of meticulous planning and secrecy, exposing a side of the Sussexes' financial independence narrative never revealed publicly. With the evidence laid bare, the palace faced an unavoidable decision that struck at the heart of royal protocol and public trust. Separate audit, triggered by irregularities discovered during what should have been a routine financial review, confirmed serious breaches of disclosure rules. The investigation concluded in mid-December 2025, and the full report reached King Charles and Prince William on January 1st. Within hours, a unanimous decision was made. Meghan Markle's title, Duchess of Sussex, would not be suspended or reviewed, but stripped permanently, with legal patents already being prepared. Legal channels were secured, and the machinery of royal authority began to move. The rarity of such a decision cannot be overstated. Stripping a title is not a symbolic gesture, but a constitutional act requiring the monarch's direct approval, consultation with senior advisors, legal experts, and often government input. The last comparable case dates back to 1936, when Edward VIII abdicated, underscoring how such measures are reserved for actions that threaten the very foundations of the monarchy. Sources familiar with the audit described the evidence against Meghan as unmistakable, an undeclared offshore account, transactions deliberately structured to avoid reporting thresholds, and funds moved quietly without disclosure. At minimum, this represents a serious breach of the financial transparency expected of the royal family. At worst, it raises questions about potential legal violations across multiple jurisdictions. The implications are staggering, particularly when contrasted with the public narrative Meghan and Harry have promoted for years, portraying themselves as financially abandoned victims forced to fend for themselves. Interviews, documentaries, and memoirs emphasized hardship and vulnerability, yet the documents show that during the same period, millions were quietly transferred into hidden accounts and multi-million-dollar estates were purchased through undisclosed channels. That image of vulnerability collapses under the weight of the evidence. Internal palace memos deepen the concern. A December 2019 note records an unusual request from Meghan's office for a detailed breakdown of royal spending on security, travel, and accommodations, information rarely shared at that level, while a February 2020 memo notes that a California law firm representing Meghan requested internal financial records weeks before her official departure. The pattern that emerges is chillingly clear. This was not a spontaneous decision to step back from royal duties, but a meticulously planned exit strategy involving offshore structures, secured finances, negotiated media deals, and the collection of internal information to fortify future legal or public positioning, all while none of it was disclosed to the family or the institution they represented. This was not independence. It was a carefully orchestrated deception. King Charles and Prince William's response reflects the seriousness of the breach. Charles, intent on modernizing and tightening financial oversight within the monarchy, views these revelations as a direct threat to that mission, exposing the crown to legal and reputational risk. William, long privately frustrated by patterns of manipulation, reportedly pressed for decisive action, arguing that partial measures would undermine credibility. The decision to strip Meghan of her title is framed not as punishment, but as protection of the institution, drawing a clear line that royal status carries responsibilities and privileges that can be withdrawn when trust is broken. While Meghan could legally contest the move, the audit was conducted by an independent firm, the evidence is detailed, and any challenge would require sworn testimony and intense scrutiny that legal advisors would likely discourage. Public perception is already shifting as documented facts collide with carefully crafted narratives and evidence outweighs statements. Harry, though not named as the principal actor, is not untouched, raising questions about complicity or awareness, neither of which reflects well. Ultimately, this is about patterns of behavior that prioritized personal wealth over institutional duty and about the consequences of eroded trust. The questions are unavoidable, the timeline is damning, and the contradictions are impossible to ignore. The palace is prepared to act, and the facts stand independent of narrative, revealing that during the very period Meghan claimed financial struggle, a hidden financial structure was quietly in motion, not only during their time as working royals, but even after stepping back. Harry and Meghan have continued to face accusations of monetizing the monarchy. Since their departure, criticism has centered not on their right to earn a living, but on when the groundwork for their deals was laid and whether royal status was leveraged to secure private profit. When they announced their exit in early 2020, the couple emphasized financial independence, yet within months unveiled lucrative agreements with Netflix, Spotify, publishers, and global speaking agencies, deals many critics argue would not have materialized without the visibility and credibility of their royal roles. Historically, members of the royal family have been restricted from commercial ventures precisely to avoid such conflicts, as royal status was never intended to function as a brand asset. The backlash intensified as much of the Sussexes' content drew heavily on royal life itself, with interviews, documentaries, and memoirs detailing palace experiences and family tensions. Supporters framed this as truth-telling, while detractors viewed it as monetizing proximity to the crown while simultaneously denouncing it, a contradiction that became central to the controversy. Constitutional experts warned that allowing royal association to convert into private profit risked setting a damaging precedent, eroding the restraint on which the monarchy depends. Public opinion in the UK has remained divided, with declining approval among those who see the monarchy as public service rather than celebrity platform, while supporters argue the couple had little choice after losing public funding and security. Critics counter that financial necessity does not erase ethical concerns, particularly given reports that negotiations began while Harry and Meghan were still representing the crown, reinforcing perceptions of overlap between duty and profit. This debate feeds directly into the unresolved issue of their royal titles. Although Buckingham Palace confirmed in 2020 that they would retain the Duke and Duchess of Sussex titles while no longer using the HRH style, the arrangement created a gray area that continues to fuel controversy. Titles carry historical and symbolic weight, and their appearance in commercial or semi-commercial contexts invite scrutiny. Reports alleging Meghan's private use of HRH-style references reignite debate, with critics arguing that even if no law was broken, the spirit of the agreement was violated, a distinction that matters deeply in royal culture. The persistence of the titles in branding and media, despite public criticism of the institution, has kept questions alive about boundaries, symbolism, and whether royal identity can be selectively embraced for profit while rejected in principle. For supporters, the Duchess title is simply Meghan's legal designation and an inseparable part of her identity. But for critics, it represents selective engagement with the monarchy, rejecting the institution while continuing to benefit from its prestige. This tension becomes sharper when titles intersect with commercial ventures, as lifestyle branding, public speaking, publishing, and media appearances all carry greater weight when linked to royal status. Critics argue that even passive use of the title enhances credibility and marketability, undermining the rationale behind stepping back from royal duties. In the UK, this debate extends into deeper constitutional concerns, since titles are granted by the Crown to reflect service and duty rather than personal ownership, leading some to argue that symbols should fall away when duty ends, while others warn that retroactively removing titles risks politicizing the monarchy and setting dangerous precedents. King Charles has appeared cautious, favoring restraint to avoid escalating a family matter into constitutional conflict, whereas Prince William is widely reported to take a firmer stance, believing clarity is essential to preserve the monarchy's future credibility and prevent ongoing controversy. Internationally, perceptions differ sharply, particularly in the United States, where royal titles function more like celebrity descriptors than constitutional markers, a cultural gap that amplifies misunderstanding, as actions that seem symbolic in America carry deep significance in Britain. The unresolved question remains whether royal titles can exist independently of royal responsibility, as the Sussexes' experience suggests that once a title enters the commercial and media ecosystem, it is nearly impossible to neutralize, reigniting debate with every appearance and brand association. As public sentiment shifts, Meghan has seen a notable decline in support, with opinion moving from early curiosity and sympathy to sustained criticism by 2025, driven by intense media scrutiny, repeated high-profile projects, and perceived contradictions between claims of independence and lucrative ventures tied to royal identity. Netflix documentaries, memoirs, and interviews have been framed by critics as exploiting royal association for personal gain, while supporters argue they reflect self-expression and advocacy, a divide amplified by social media, where praise and criticism spread rapidly and polarize opinion. Polling reflects this contrast, showing stronger approval among some international and younger audiences, but sharply declining support in the UK, where concerns focus on transparency, entitlement, and commercialization of royal status, issues that extend beyond personal likability to the integrity of the monarchy itself. Media coverage highlighting unpopularity often reinforces this cycle, shaping perception as much as reporting it, with consequences not only for Meghan and Harry's personal brand, but also for the institution they remain linked to. As a result, their advocacy efforts, Charitable messaging and public appearances are frequently filtered through skepticism, illustrating how closely their identity is now tied to public opinion and how difficult it has become to escape the shadow of earlier controversies.